In this segment, we're going to talk about understanding OCD, that it's more than just cleanliness and perfectionism. And we really want to educate the public on what OCD truly is and what it isn't. So this is something that April and I talked about before the show. I had misconceptions in my mind about OCD. I remember my very first experience with OCD. It was my uncle. Way back. I was probably, 10, 11, probably the first time I heard the acronym. And he had a cottage that we typically only went up to in the winter. We would do snowmobiling, et cetera, et cetera. And one time he didn't set the cottage right for the remainder of the winter before he left, and the pipes burst. So every single time from then on, what he would do would take a permanent marker, and he would have 10 things that he needed to check at the cottage. And he would go by and check each one, and he would do a little dash on his hand to make sure he had all 10. And then he would go back and check it again. And I asked him, like, what's with the marks on the hands? And that's when he said, it's my OCD. I have to make sure things are perfect before I leave. I never thought much of it. OCD wasn't much involved in my life. Didn't get a lot of media of it when I was younger. And so that's what stayed in my mind for a long time. But let's break it down from the expert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think checking is something that we often hear a lot in regards to OCD. It's a compulsive, like a physical compulsive behavior that you're engaging in to relieve distress of some type of fear. So like for your uncle, we don't know what his fear was. Was it that like the pipes will burst, the house is destroyed, he loses everything? Like it can go way past to like an illogical fear that doesn't even make sense to the scenario anymore because OCD's just like pulled it out. But engaging in these like compulsive behaviors, they're done to feel better, to relieve this like distress and this uncomfortable feeling. When it comes to like the misconceptions, I think the media often portrays OCD in ways of like cleaning and perfectionism. And I think checking again is one that's commonly heard. Or, you unfortunately hear like jokes about the light switches and things like that. So I think it's often joked about. We hear a lot of people saying, oh, I'm so OCD in regards to organizing. And I think there is this like misunderstanding of how harmful that is to someone with OCD. And because when it comes to OCD, it's not about like preference of neatness or anything like that. OCD truly is like a debilitating disorder. It is life altering. It can result in someone no longer eating or drinking. It can result in them like being hospitalized and just losing everything in their life because it's so terrifying and so debilitating. Right. And so making a joke about like just your preference for neatness is it leaves someone feeling invalidated and isolated and lonely and ashamed, right? Because if you're having thoughts that, well, if I don't do this thing perfectly or this doesn't feel right, like my family's going to die in a car crash, or I'm going to do this horrible thing, or, what if I say something inappropriate and like you just can't trust yourself anymore? It makes you think you're the problem because, well, it's not OCD. OCD is about being neat and tidy, right? Like I think it stops people from seeking proper care and understanding truly what is happening. I know in our previous podcast, I talked about like probably like 75 to 80% of people come in to seek support have said they tried therapy and it just didn't work. There is another portion of the people that are coming in that say, I've never tried therapy. I had for anxiety because I never thought that what I was experiencing was OCD. I always thought OCD was being clean and organized. I never thought it could all be in my head and that I wouldn't have any physical compulsions, or that the fear could be something unrelated to needing to be organized.
Yeah. So it seems like with many things, we want to slap a very simple label on it, and that can lead to confusion, misinformation. Now I'm self-diagnosing myself with that very simple label. This is what it is. This is what I've been told, 5 words, cleanliness and perfectionism. I'm not that, so I'm going to move over here. And then we also hear, especially in the business world or the athletic world, 2 worlds that I've spent a lot of time in, that perfectionism is worn as a badge of honor in many cases. We will hear from people, I'm a perfectionist. This doesn't meet my standards. Like Steve Jobs, in his biography, it said countless times he was a perfectionist. But he was a bastard to most people in his life when he's, painting the inside of the computer, something that nobody sees at all, and picking up a computer and smashing it on the ground and firing people because one spot didn't have that piece of paint, something that no one would see. Some people look at that as, no, his level of care was inhuman, and that's why he reached the level of success he did.
Mm-hmm.
But the people that experienced him would have said, no, his consideration towards me was inhuman in many ways. He was a tyrant. So it's an interesting thing, but providing clarity for it, I just think is something we need for all of these major things that happen in our life, rather than the simple label we want to put on it, trying to research a little bit more and understand really what's going on here.
Yeah, I think that just even highlights that you never know what's going on in someone else's head, right? Like, as you just said, like the other person's view is completely different than what his is. It could also be like, is there some fear-based experience there? I think another like well-known person, like Michael Jackson, was known as being a perfectionist. It also comes with a lot of trauma, right? And also Michael Jackson is said to have OCD. And so is it this fear of judgment that's coming through, that like, if it's imperfect, there will be judgment? Like, is my trauma being ignited because of it? Like, we really never know why someone's acting the way they are unless we are able to talk to them and they share and explore, like, what is the core piece behind all of it? And again, I think that's the biggest piece of OCD, is what is the core piece that's driving your OCD? It's not always what's on the forefront of, the behaviors that you see.
And then rooted in compassion and empathy. I mean, that line that you just mentioned, I don't know, 40 seconds ago, you never know what's going on in somebody's life. It's like, it's so easy to get wrapped up in our own stuff. Just the human experience. It happens to me all the time. And then I go and do something because this is what I need, or I believe this is what our thing needs. And then I find out how it affected somebody else. I'm like, I didn't even stop for a moment to consider that she or he is going through that. So another reason to go to therapists that have the expertise in working with people having these conditions, because they make that mistake a whole lot less than somebody who is less involved with that experience. But something that I'm really curious in, and this I only started to learn once I started to read the information that you sent my way and start to research on it. But this was fascinating to me, and I'm glad I have more clarity on it. Can you break down the difference between obsessions and compulsions in simple terms for our audience? Not super deep, but I didn't even think that those two things were connected. I never put them together in my mind. And now knowing them, I feel like I know myself a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to explaining what OCD is, you look at your obsessive compulsive disorder. So I like to break down the two. And we first look at the obsession, and an obsession could be like a thought, a feeling, a sensation, an urge, an image that brings forward distress. So again, that intrusive thought that came through, you have a body sensation, like anything that brings up this anxiety or distress for you. I do try to highlight distress because it's not always anxiety. It can be a guilt feeling. It can be just like anger, like any sadness. It could be any sort of emotion that is coming through that's creating this distress, but we do often see that it is anxiety. I just like to highlight sometimes it comes through as like guilt, because shame is a big thing of OC as well. So you have your obsessions, the thoughts, the feelings, the urges, the sensations that create distress for you. And then you have your compulsions, which are known as any mental or physical act that you engage in to reduce the distress that was created from the obsession. So
that you engage in, though.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a big part for me, because I'm thinking like mental action. I'm like, okay, trying to understand like what that even is. I have thoughts up there mainly, but it's because I engaged with it that now it became compulsion.
Yeah. So like I guess a mental, because a lot of people, there's something called PRO that gets very confusing, where it's like I only have obsessions. But even the creator and the person that coined PRO, the purpose wasn't to say that you don't have compulsions. It was to say that your compulsions are kind of silent. They're mental. No, like you're not seeing them physically. And so body scanning could be a mental compulsion. Self-reassurance, ruminating, like looking at your past and mentally reviewing a past conversation, like anything you're doing and I think the past conversation one is probably one a lot of people experience with any type of social situation, right? Like, what are you doing with that? Why are we going back to the past and reviewing a conversation over and over and over again? And it's, well, I need certainty that I didn't say something, that I didn't blurt out a horrible word, or I didn't make someone feel bad in some way. Like, you're doing it to remove the distress from something that's happening for you. But it's like, again, it's just so loud and it's pulling you from everything else in your life. The thing with OCD is, and like our memory, is that we can't remember everything. There's always going to be a gap. And guess who's just waiting, lined up to like fill in the answer of the gap? Well, it's OCD, and it's going to fill it in with your worst fear, right? Because that's what it's there for. So we know that like engaging in these compulsions essentially like give a platter to the OCD of like, here, keep bugging me with these. Like, let me keep giving you ideas to keep torturing me with. But again, it keeps the alarm going. It teaches your brain it's needed. And so it just keeps you in this cycle. So when we look at the OCD cycle, you have an obsession, you have this anxiety that comes through, or this distress, you engage in a compulsion, and you have temporary relief. Sometimes it's never enough, especially for like a just right feeling. Like you'll like, I just need to do it twice and then I'll feel right. And then it's like, you can't, because you're controlling yourself. Like the brain is like manipulating that, like you can never get that just right feeling. So you're stuck there for hours trying to feel just right. So even a compulsion sometimes won't relieve it, but technically you'll have a short relief from the compulsion, and then you're right back in the cycle. But this time, and each time you do it, you're in the cycle, like it has more strength. It has more evidence to keep you in it because you've given it through the compulsions.
Condition the mind, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you talked about that compulsion sometimes gives relief, because I'm thinking in my head, it's like, okay, so I have this thought. It's now turned into an obsessive thought pattern, which has created stress or distress. And now I'm, whether mentally or physically, acting on it, because that's the lever or action for relief. But it seems like in many cases that causes even more distress and sends me back in that loop over and over again. So it's kind of the insidiousness, if that's the right word for OCD, is that it almost like presents you with an answer of relief and making your life better. It's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? Like, here's what you need to do. And then you do it, and then you're not given a reward, and you're conditioning the mind to keep doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the nastiness of it, right?
Yeah. And yeah, it's like, here, absolutely. Yeah, here's a solution. You'll feel better if you just do this. And again, like just the meaning making and the what ifs are such big things that pull you in even more too. So
yeah. Okay. Let's talk about, okay, we just touched on that. But let's talk about what are some of the lesser known types or themes of OCD that people might not realize exist. So we touched on a couple of them, but if we could just give, this is the picture I hope we're really about to paint, is somebody's listening to this, and at least to me right now, even speaking directly to an expert, we already have a relationship. I've learned a fair bit about OCD from you. Not everybody has access like we do. It's still it's becoming more clear, but still confusing to find out some of these things align with me. And I wouldn't have never thought that I had OCD before this conversation, but I'm reading some of this stuff and I'm hearing what you say, and it's like some of these things align with me. So if we could talk about some of those lesser known types or themes of OCD, so that maybe we could present some type of checklist. These are the ways OCD could show up, so that I can go through that checklist and be like, okay, maybe this is something I need to explore more, or I have 8 out of 10 of these. I need to seek out help, and this can make my life better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to highlight too, when we talk about like the lesser known ones, I would say it's not that they're not experienced as much. Like I think a lot of people, there's many different subtypes, and someone could experience like one subtype throughout their life, or they can experience them all. And I think there's a lot of them that are very common, but they're less known because they're not talked about or they're not acknowledged as OCD. So for example, like kind of starting off strong with like those taboo ones, right? Like I think taboo related subtypes are quite common because, again, OC is ego dystonic. So it goes against your values and like what's going to latch you on to engaging in that OCD cycle and finding certainty better than something that makes you feel like you're going to harm someone, or you're this bad person, or you are like having sexual inappropriate thoughts towards children or loved ones in a way that like goes against everything in your body. So like having these taboo thoughts, they don't get talked about because they're so scary to bring forward.
Right.
And I just like to bring them forward here to say, like, we hear them all the time. They're very common. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're having intrusive thoughts that are of a topic that is very distressing, but normal. But your brain is making meaning of like an intrusive random image or thought at an inappropriate time, or just a thought that was very disturbing, because we all have those. But then we're making meaning of it, just like we talked about before in a previous podcast with like that intrusive thought. Well, now I need to know why. What does it mean? What if it's true? And it just creates like all of this distrust. And now you feel like this horrible person. So like harm OCD, sexual, or like pedophilic OCD are very common, but not talked about very frequently. Right. Even like sexual orientation and like identity. Who am I? Am I really attracted to like someone of the same sex or opposite sex? Am I lying to myself? What does this all mean? That falls into like also going into relationship OCD. Am I attracted to this person? Are they the one? Relationship OCD kind of has like two aspects, in the sense that it could pick apart the partner. It can find flaws in a partner and just hone in on them, or it can pick
ourselves, right?
Pardon?
Or ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like, and then it can pick apart like the relationship itself. Like, do they love me? Do I love them? Like trying to compare to other couples. How do I feel? Am I having a groinal response or not? Like all of these things that our body's like doing, and we're trying to scan and figure out because we need an answer to it all. And so our body is just firing. I think too, the thing is with like trying to create sensations, it's like a doctor tells you don't look up a heart attack, because it's like you will create it. So think about the stickiness and the difficulty we put ourselves in when we engage in compulsions to figure it out, because like you can pause sensations, you can create sensations, you can do all of these things to fill an answer to fit the OC narrative, which is like not a true narrative. It's one that's holding fear and goes against actually who you are. So it's the compulsions are very sticky and something we want to try to catch as soon as we can. Going back to subtypes, like you can get existential, philosophical OCD, kind of talking about like what is real, what isn't, is this life? You also have like religious, like just right OCD. So like magical thinking. If I don't tap this perfectly, set this water bottle down perfectly, flip a switch a certain amount of times, my mom will die in a fiery car crash. Or like magical thinking is like two things completely unrelated. If I don't tuck in my bed sheet, something horrible is going to happen to someone on the other side of the world, like anything like that. There's a wide range. I think one I will say that is not really talked about at all, or I don't hear very often, is like the somatic one. So like hyper awareness around blinking and swallowing, or just doing a thing of like a body sensation. And in ERP, we're often looking at like, well, I guess I'm the one that just blinks forever the rest of their life, or will always know about their blinking. Or like, it's like the more you hyper focus on it, the more you're and like it's like you forget how to blink, you forget how to swallow, because they're things that just happen so automatically without thought that we confuse everything, and now we're overthinking trying to figure out how to swallow, and then we feel like we can't, and it almost feels like scary and like we're going to choke if we do. So all these things we're being hyper fixating on our body can also be something related to OCD. Bit of a different like experience, and again, like the other ones that we talked about, and I think is often missed or not seen as frequently.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really unpacking OCD so much more, to be like, you thought it was just this one or two things, now it is so much more, and the picture is getting clearer and clearer. It seems like some of the thoughts that you talk about, I imagine many people question their sexuality. Mm-hmm. And then that may be it. They may just think about it here or there. It may pop up in their head here or there, but then they go to work and they find joy here and they get back to their relationship and it's productive and they go to sleep and they don't ruminate about it. So to me, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, it doesn't seem like that person would have OCD. Another person has the same thought, but now the compulsions kick in, and now what they plan to do for that day goes out the window. Their treatment to themselves, their treatment to other people, it can be derailing. So it seems like it's not just necessarily if you have this thought, it's if you have this thought and this strong reaction that could lead to you having OCD and seeking help. But it also seems like OCD could in and of itself create these really strong thoughts. Like the one that really came up to me is, that sexual desire towards children. I have no idea how many people think that out there. That's a really taboo subject, and you get demonized in public. Any movies about it, any media about it, like we really push that thing away because we think it's so horrible. So I don't know if that's a common thought out there. To me, that's not something I've thought about, and I don't know. I've never had that conversation with anybody. So all the information I have about that is from either movies or media in some way. And of course, they have their agenda to that too. So I'm getting it through an extremely filtered lens. But that seems like a very destructive thought that the average person wouldn't get. So I'm trying to understand a bit more, especially for the audience, for the listener, is you could be having normal everyday thoughts of the average person, but if your reaction is extremely strong to that and derailing, it could be OCD. OCD in and of itself. Pardon me?
Oh, I was just going to quickly say your reaction to it is so strong because the inability to tolerate the unknown, like because OCD is like that, it's the doubting piece, that doubting disorder that you had this thought and then you're like sideswiped by the doubt and the unknown, and the intolerable anxiety around not knowing is why you then go and do your compulsions. So it's like your reaction to the thoughts, the meaning, the importance you give the thoughts that don't deserve. And that's what treatment's all about, is learning these thoughts can come in and trying not to like respond to them, let your nervous system settle. Yeah. And I think to follow up with those more like pedophilia type thoughts, the average person does have them. We just don't know because we don't acknowledge them as that. They are passing images, passing thoughts that we don't think twice about, right? Like I have nephews. I could be hanging out with my nephews all day. Like we can at the pool, in the sprinklers or in their bathing suits. We're hanging out. I go home. I see my husband. I give my husband a kiss. At the same time I'm kissing my husband, I get an image of my nephews hanging out in the sprinkler earlier that day. Completely normal thing to have. You had an image of something you're doing earlier that day. Random image. We have thousands of thoughts and images all day. If I don't have OCD, it's, well, that was weird, whatever. Might not even acknowledge that even happened because it doesn't even matter. And I move on with my day. OCD brain, well, that wasn't okay. Why did you have an image of that while you're kissing your husband? That shouldn't have happened. What does that mean about you? You need to figure this out. Until you figure it out, you cannot see them. You cannot be trusted with children. And it just spirals. Same with like changing a diaper. You get a thought, or you're looking because you have to clean. You look too long. What does that say about you? You can't trust yourself. And then it spirals.
Yeah, so that clarifies it a bit more for the person listening. Am I experiencing these things? Am I getting these types of thoughts? Are these reactions and compulsions kicking in? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. The fear and isolation, I want to touch on that a little bit because that, again, there's a number of things. The addiction world, I can only experience life through my own lenses, right? And if I can resonate with something, if I see similarities, it helps me understand it a little bit more. I think most human beings are like that. That was huge in the addiction world, is shame and isolation. Those were the two main, 1,000-foot brick walls that stop people from taking any action. So I imagine the same is true for OCD. In addiction, it was, I'm pathetic. I can't go to work without using substances. I missed my mother's funeral because I couldn't go there without my substances. I'm a leech on everybody. No one will like me. No one knows this experience like me. I'm worthless. So I'm not going to do anything. No one can help me. Those are common thoughts from the addict. until they either decide this is not the way life is supposed to be. I'm desperate. I surrender. I go in and I get help. And then many don't, and many are not here anymore. So the shame and isolation was huge for us to identify, because it was life was on the line in many cases. So let's talk about that in OCD. Many people with OCD struggle with shame and isolation. How do you help clients understand that they're not alone? I think that is a big part. How do you normalize this experience for them so that they feel like this isn't just a me thing? I'm not completely broken, unfixable, unhelpable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we start with going on podcasts like this and just like talking again, like I purposely brought up the taboo ones because that is like less and less people access support because there's so much shame tied to those thoughts. And I think the more we talk about them, the more we normalize them, the more people feel like, oh, okay, like this isn't me. This isn't who I am. I think that falls into also externalizing the OCD. So a lot of our work is trying to recognize like, you are not the OCD, like these thoughts are not you. And so we often will name the OCD in some way to be able to recognize that it's this external power that's coming in. And people often will say, it feels like I have two brains, like I have my logical brain and I have my like the OCD. And the OCD essentially just consumes the logical brain, which is why we can't use logic to argue with it. And so it's kind of seeing like, okay, this is the OCD part of your brain that's activated. Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond? So I think, again, talking about it more, bringing awareness to it more, I think helps address a lot of that shame and normalizing the experience, being able to externalize the OCD instead of internalizing it as like, these are my thoughts. I should take responsibility for them because they are not. And the other piece is like really bringing in that self-compassion, right? Like I'm doing my best and like I can only do what I know and I'm handling this as best as I can. Just really highlighting that, yeah, you are a human and you didn't ask for this. And you're showing up and doing the best you can for yourself at this point.
So not being a tyrant to yourself, it's not helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can live well with OCD, right? Like I think it's once you learn that like, oh, all these behaviors I've been doing have actually made it worse and being able to engage in treatment and have that relief in symptoms, you have to learn that I can live life well and I can live life with these thoughts. I can live life with anxiety because that's all they are. They're just thoughts. And although we don't want to say that to ourselves in treatment because that becomes a reassurance, I think as a one-off and throughout treatment, we do want to recognize a lot of these experiences that you're having, these initial thoughts, they're all normal. It's again, the doubt and the unknown that then takes it somewhere else and the distress.
Right. And for the last question of this second segment here, which I think segues from this perfectly, is you wrote in one of your articles that the thoughts you have do not define you. And that's basically what you're talking about right now. You have these thoughts. They don't create your identity. Thoughts are, in many cases, just thoughts. I have weird thoughts all the time. If I were to pay attention to every thought in my head a day, it would be a full-time, never-ending job. But there's strange stuff up there all the time, especially being in the fitness world. A lot of us have something called body dysmorphia. No matter how big, ripped, and perfect our bodies get, there's always this lack of satisfaction. You look in the mirror one day and you're like, yeah, you're gross. And people are looking at you like, what are you seeing? What are you saying? So it's, when I get those thoughts, it's like, bro, just chill out a little bit, man. Nobody looks at you like you look at you. Stop being a tyrant to yourself. This doesn't make you who you are. This isn't your identity. This is just something's happening. And then, like you said, almost detaching yourself from your thoughts, sitting in it, not reacting, letting the thought kind of come up like a wave, come down, and then it just leaves. It reminds me just in that experience that I am not my thoughts. I get to choose my identity, attach it to what I am in control of. And the thoughts can just come and go. You feel that is true for OCD as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the more we give, I think even just breaking it down to general life, it's what we give attention to is what we're going to feel. Right. So if we focus on this negativity and feed into this fear, it's like, well, you're going to feel kind of crummy. Right. And you're going to feel bad about yourself and down. And so although you do not have control over your intrusive thoughts, you have control on what you do after them and with them.